Hello and welcome aboard, everybody. I'm Richard Nongard with Peachtree Professional Education,
And I'm David Park.
and we're here today to share with you some very valuable ideas that can help transform the way that you offer helping services to individuals. I'm really looking forward to the next 4 weeks where we're going to touch on a lot of different skills that you can actually use to experience success in your private practice. Now, before we go any further, I want to cover a couple of administrative things simply related to the webinar here. Over here to the side is a chat box, and if you haven't signed in and said where you're from, it would be awesome. You can type who you are and where you're from. It's always good to know where everybody is from. That's also the place that you can ask us any questions, and Dave and I are happy to answer any questions at any time. And so you can just type them over there in the chat box, and we'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you have throughout tonight as well as the next 4 weeks. The other thing I want you to know is that if you ever miss any of these 4 sessions, the archives are available to you. When you signed up, you got a PDF. It told you how to access this as a real-time webinar. That same sheet on page 2 actually has instructions for accessing the archive. So if you miss a week, you can actually go back at any time and you can watch the full webcast. In fact, Dave and I are going to share a lot of tremendous content with you. I think you should probably have a pad of paper and a pen so you can write down some notes. But you can actually go review this, even if you're participating real time, and you can review the information and the content to find out what's valuable to you. Dave, what are we really going to focus on over the next hour today?
Well, what we're going to talk about today, let me start out by asking, as a therapist, what sets you apart from other therapists? Why would anybody come see you? You know, there are a lot of therapists.
It's kind of a tough question,
right?
Especially the way you phrased it.
Well, and it's the real thing. If you think I'm a great person or I'm a good therapist, so what? You know, how do people know that? How do people find that out? So what we're going to really share with you today is how to really niche yourself and brand yourself so that you become the go-to expert in your field, so that people know that when they have a challenge, when they have a problem, that you are the person to see for that problem. Now, I think that for a lot of people, the idea of niching is kind of scary because we think that, wow, there are 320 billion or million people in the United States, and then close to 6 billion people in the world, and if I niche myself, I'm really cutting down on my market.
Sure.
But the thing is that everybody in the world has a problem. Everybody has a problem. But if you're just sort of generally out there like, hey, whatever your problem, I can help you solve that, people don't respond to that. People don't respond to that. If you say that I'm a relationship therapist or I'm a relationship coach, people are like, oh, okay, cool. But then if you say, I'm a relationship therapist who only works with married couples over the age of 40, then you go, okay, well, I see. Well, then you go, well, I'm a marriage therapist who only works with couples over the age of 40 who are in their second marriages. Oh. And then you go down even further. I'm a marriage therapist who only works with couples, over the age of 40 who are on their second marriage and have blended families.
Right.
Then what happens is when you say I'm a relationship therapist or I'm a relationship coach, people go, okay, great. There's a lot of those out there. But when you give them specifically who you work with, people will, people who normally wouldn't go to a relationship therapist or relationship coach will say, well, this person understands me.
Sure. So the paradox here is that by defining and creating a niche, one of the things that we actually experience is tremendous growth. And I think a lot of therapists are really afraid of this. They spend their limited advertising budget. Let's say they buy a billboard, right? They buy a billboard on the highway. And what they do is they put Richard's Therapy Center and the phone number, and then over here they put group therapy, over here they put individual therapy, over here they put depression, over here they put anxiety, over here they put substance abuse, because they don't want to miss anybody who might drive by and see that sign,
right?
Versus spending all of that sign space to simply put Richard's second marriage over 40 with blended family counseling center.
Or does your interracial marriage need help?
Sure.
Right? Or does your adolescent daughter have body image issues?
Right.
Right? Just as narrowly defined Who are you seeing? What are you seeing them for?
Sure. I think you're absolutely right that a lot of people are afraid to create a niche and then create a brand. But the paradoxical thing here is that it's easier to obtain recognition when you create a niche and when you create a brand. What we're going to be spending our time on in this first of the 4 webinars on developing a successful private practice is really this area. One other thing I want to touch on from an administrative perspective, because I'd gotten a couple of emails that asked me about the CEU course you get when you complete this course. That is correct. Because I cannot provide CEU hours for business-related or private practice development courses. For those of you who stay through all 4 sessions and participate in all 4 sessions, at the end in our 4th session, I will give you the access information so that you can take advantage of any of our webinars, our $39 webinars over the next 12 months. And so you'll have access to that information in the 4th session for those of you who are asking. Dave, let me ask you a little bit about your practice. What is it that you're doing? Who is it that you're seeing? How is it that you've branded yourself?
Now, I'm a coach, a life coach and executive coach. And as you know, a lot of therapists are moving into the coaching field. But for myself, I started out in the military. And then I decided that I still wanted to serve people as I was leaving the military and paramilitary field. And so really coaching came up as the way to do that. My specialty is helping people overcome fear. Now that's actually a very general niche, but I've sort of worked my way up. And one of the things that we'll tell you later, or talk about later, is how once you establish sort of expert status in one particular field, that transfers over to a number of different fields. But the clients that I see...
And by the way, I'm going to expand on your resume a little bit because I think this is really important to understand the niche that Dave has found himself in. Dave is a former Navy diver who then became an Army Ranger, who then spent the majority of the last 10 years in Iraq and Afghanistan as a military advisor. This is a person who is a true leader, and he has engaged in leadership coaching with individuals to help them resolve their issues specifically related to fear. And so Dave's personal experiences have led him to define and create his niche.
Right. One of the things that I found when I started my own business was that, there was a lot of fear there, and it would keep me from doing certain things. And even in my relationships, even looking back on past relationships, I saw how fear would come up and sort of inhibit what I would do or keep me from achieving what I wanted to. And so then I looked back at my time in combat and said, excuse me, looked back on my time in combat and said, well, how come when people were shooting at me, even though I was afraid, I could still move forward? And yet the fear feels so paralytic to me, in these sort of mundane situations. So I actually, took all the skills I had as a coach and I unpacked really the resources that I had while I was in combat and said, well, these are the things that I had then that I don't have now. And so through that, I was able to, overcome, the fear that was holding me back in my life. And then that was the service that I began to offer to executives. And then, and then it branched out into relationships and it branched out into a number of different things. And now it's just generally the fear coach. So that is, that's sort of how I got into it.
Now, you do a lot of coaching then for executives.
I do a lot of coaching for executives. I mean, I've coached an associate publisher of a magazine, the head of a modeling agency in New York, the head of a corporation.
You're based in New York City, so
I'm based in New York City.
You have a lot of opportunity to work with a lot of executives and really world leaders as well. And you see clients from around the world as well, don't you?
I do. I use Skype. I have clients in Finland. I have clients in Sweden. I have had clients in Australia, all over the world. Once you get established as an expert in a field, then people go that. So somebody might be looking at, one of the things about life coaches, and here's a good exercise. And actually, we'll go over that when we do our elevator speech. We're going to teach you how to do an elevator pitch. But a lot of people go, I'm a life coach, or I'm a therapist, or whatever, or I'm an attorney. But that doesn't help anybody when they're trying to find somebody to solve their specific problem, right? So if I instead say, I'm a person who helps people overcome their fear or fear that is holding them back, or I'm a person that helps people overcome fear of failure, then people go, oh, fear of failure does hold me back, right? And that's so much more powerful than saying I'm a life coach.
And one of the things that we often do as therapists is we think that our skills are only useful with one group of people, those with a diagnosed mental illness. The reality is, fear of failure is something many people who are exceptional people experience. There are famous actors, famous politicians, famous public speakers, famous superachievers in this world who have struggled with the issue of fear. And one of the things that we need to recognize that as therapists, we have a unique skill set. Most of us actually have a degree in what literally is problem solving. Our problem in therapy is that the vast majority of us have applied this skill set with only one group of people, and that is people with a mental illness. We've diagnosed the mental illness, and then we've prescribed a treatment for that mental illness. The reality is, in the USA, there are 320 million people. Only 60 million people have a diagnosed mental illness. When we only restrict our practice to the treatment of people who have fear related to anxiety disorder and mental illness, we exclude a potential market of almost 250 million people who could benefit from an expert. What Dave and I are going to share with you in this webinar series are the skills and the strategies that you can use to create a marketable and profitable private practice. Those of you who are watching this webinar right now, when you graduated from therapy school, you probably had a mental picture in your mind of being in your office with a successful, thriving private practice, actually helping people make the changes that they wanted to make, and at the same time profiting from the skills that you had. You probably imagined a waiting list of people who couldn't make an appointment for 2 or 3 months because you were so in demand. But your experience probably has been the opposite. You've probably gone to work for an agency, an institution, or an organization in order to gain experience, and that's a great thing. And you probably found meaning in the work that you do, and that's awesome because it feels really good to help people. But you've also probably been a little bit disenchanted by the salaries those of us in mental health work earn when we're working in agency and institutional settings. And so you've probably thought about opening up a private practice, but the idea is probably something really scary to you. Because you've heard from the movies, from Hollywood, a great lie. And that is, if you build it, they will come. But some part of you is probably fearful, good thing we have a fear expert with us, that if I build it, they won't come. Or you found, once you signed the lease on the office, committed to that $350 or $450 or $550 a month, bought the office furniture and printed those fancy business cards, that the phone didn't ring. And you've wondered, what is it that I'm doing wrong? And the strategies that Dave and I are going to be sharing with you during this webinar are very practical things. And so our starting point for change within our experiences as therapists is going to be defining and creating and developing a niche, a brand, and utilizing that to set us apart from all of the other therapists out there. You've attended this webinar because it's your desire and your goal to either create a successful, profitable practice or to fill the empty room that you're calling your office that isn't serving as an office because the telephone's not ringing and people aren't calling you. And the very first stage or the very first step is for you to have a very clear idea as to what your niche and what your expertise is. Now, Dave is lucky in some ways. His experiences have been both incredible and perhaps in some ways tragic, and yet it's very easy to see where becoming the fear expert comes from through Dave's personal experiences. Well, my pathway, my career success, my career path has certainly not been nearly as dramatic as Dave's or some of the experience Dave has had. My career path is much like many other therapists. I had some personal experiences probably that I want to sort out. I think Horny and Horny wrote a book years ago called Meeting Your Own Neurotic Needs about why people become therapists. And I entered into this profession maybe to answer some of my own questions. And that's how I got in this field. And there wasn't anything really unique or special about me that set me apart from others. And yet when I entered private practice, I was able to separate myself from all of the other therapists by creating a niche, by creating a brand, and by marketing that. And so that's the starting point for those of you who are participating in this webinar. And that's what Dave and I are going to share with you over the next couple of minutes. In fact, we're going to share 6 things that you need to do in order to create a successful niche so that you can create a successful and profitable private practice.
Right. So one of the things that is really popular in Western culture is the idea of follow your passion. Follow your dreams and the money will come. And unfortunately, that's not always true.
Now, that's not what the starving artist down at the coffee shop that sells their art says. They all say that they're just waiting for somebody to come in and buy all the art. They've been following their passion.
Right. In the field of coaching, there's the idea of the sexy side of things and then the monetary sides of things, right? So the sexy sides of things are where your passions are. It's what am I really passionate about? But here's the thing. If you're really passionate about, for instance, helping, single mothers under the age of 25, you have to ask yourself, where's the leverage, and is there a market for that? Yes, there are a lot of single mothers under the age of 25 who could probably use your help, but you have to be able to create sort of the monetary structure, whether it's I'm only going to do group coaching with them so I can get 10 of them at a time, only pay me $200 a month or whatever that is. But you have to be able to create the format that will support it if you are not picking a field or a niche that is relatively affluent. So, for instance, you started out in chemical dependency.
Sure.
Now, when you first moved to Tulsa, is that what you did, chemical
No, in
dependency?
fact, when I decided to leave traditional therapy behind and in 2006 adopted an entirely new model where I was not seeking third-party reimbursement. I want to stress, I've not filled out an insurance form since 2006. My clients don't ask me about insurance. I'm uninterested in collecting insurance. My clients know what my full fee is, and they pay me my full fee in advance, and it's been like that since 2006. And by the way, I stay as busy as I possibly can. In other words, I'm a busy person. I'm not wishing that I had more business. I'm in private practice. There's only one of me, and I'm seeing as many people as I possibly can. And so when I first came to this point in my career when I was going to leave traditional therapy behind, where I was a generalist and saw people for a variety of different mental health related conditions. And what I did back then was I would actually spend an hour with a client, and then I would spend an hour fighting with the insurance company to collect half my fee. And after doing that every single day, I just became frustrated. I said, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to do something different. I happen to also be certified as a personal fitness trainer. I recognize that we can only be as emotionally as well as we are physically. I think that's an important part of the therapeutic work that I do. And I also am a competitive pistol shooter.
Okay.
I enjoy pistol shooting and some of those shooting sports activities. Now, when I came to Tulsa, and established this model, what I needed to do was set myself apart from everybody else. And so my niche became sports performance, in particular, shooting sports performance. And I got the opportunity to work with some of the top pistol shooters, whether it's IPSC or Bianchi Cup style shooting. I got a chance to work with shotgun shooters, a wide variety of others, and my success with them and helping them to achieve their goals within that niche led to other teams calling me, and I began to work with entire teams, both professional and amateur teams, Olympic athletes, and it really snowballed. The reason why I developed that niche, though, really wasn't about my passion for sports. It was just something that I enjoyed and something I recognized. It's actually because the cheapest radio station to advertise on was the sports station. You see, the rock and roll station was on FM and they charged $40 an ad, but the sports radio station was on AM and they only charged $10 an ad. And so I could only afford to advertise on the sports station. And so I bought advertising on that sports station and used my previous experience as a personal fitness trainer and my interest in some of my own sporting activities to create that niche. But I did it out of, I guess, restricted income at the time,
right,
but also because I recognized that this was an area where other therapists weren't offering their services.
Right.
I hear therapists all the time say, well, I can help people with sports psychology, but I don't see it on their business card. I don't see it on a billboard. I don't see they've written a book on it.
And how, when we say that everybody has a problem, if you say sports psychology, it's sort of kind of a broad concept, right? But if you say pistol shooting, then people who are pistol shooters go, oh,
There's an expert for us.
there's an expert for us. He understands me,
Right.
right? And the way, if you're worried about saying, oh, well, you can't make a living, and honestly, you can. We were talking about the person who saw only equestrians,
Right.
Right. There was a coach who only saw equestrian riders, and because that's the only thing they did, they basically are the expert. So whether they see people over Skype or people fly in from all over the world to see them, because not that another coach or another therapist couldn't help people with the psychology of equestrian riding and sports, why are they going to go see a generalist when they can see somebody who's speaking directly to them?
And by the way, I want to point out that when I was doing niche work, specifically focusing in the area of sports performance and the equestrian coach that you're talking about, I wasn't out there on the range teaching them how to shoot. That's a consultant.
Right.
The coach that you're talking about isn't out there in
Teaching
the
them how
arena
to ride.
teaching them how to jump over things. What is the need these people have? The need is at the top level of professional athletics, it's a mental game to separate yourself from the patterns in the past that have kept you from achieving your highest level of potential. By the way, this is what coaching really is all about. Coaching is not about fixing what's wrong with broken people. That's what we do in traditional psychotherapy. Coaching is actually about a new model where we help people who already have resources, who are in many cases at the top of their game, whether it's sports, whether it's academics, whether it's business, political leadership, to achieve their highest level of potential. And so that first element of niching is to recognize that your passion may not be what's most profitable. And so as you determine, what is it that I'm going to do to separate me from the other therapists in my building or the other therapists in my town, recognize that it's as easy to choose a niche where people can afford to pay for your
Right.
services as it is to choose a niche where people cannot pay for your services.
Right. And if you do pick one of those niches where the people don't have the money, then you have to learn how to create or model the structures in which you can get that money.
Sure. Or there are lots of avenues available to people. A lot of people go into therapy not only because we don't have to take math to get the degree, but we also go into therapy because we really want to help people make change. Well, if your passion is, I want to help single mothers under 25 who have no resources experience hope, wellness, and happiness in life, more power to you. You can do that Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 11 p.m., but you're going to need a caseload Monday through Friday from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. That can afford to pay their bill so that you can continue to provide those benevolent services. So there's nothing in what Dave and I are talking about that keeps you from being benevolent. In fact, many therapists continue because they feel it's truly a mission to minister through therapy to those who are the most needy. And you can continue to offer traditional therapy services to individuals who are truly in need. But if you find yourself at the end of the month wishing that you had more money to make sure your car payment was paid, that your house payment was paid, and that you had the ability to do some of the things that other professions with advanced degrees do, then you're going to need to create a niche so that you can at least create some clientele within this area that can help you to experience financial success.
Right. So the second part, or the second step in creating your niche, is to define your audience. Who exactly do you want to serve? Who are you targeting? Now, this can be by sex, by age, by sexual orientation, by
any of the cultural divisions that we seem to have with people.
Right. It can all by skill set, by
Geography.
profession, geography. Yeah, I mean it can be literally anything.
You know, one of the ways that I separated my one of my niches earlier, you know, I've done a lot of work with bariatric counseling.
Right.
One of my niches is I only provide services. I only work with obese men who are in their 40s. In other words, the majority of clients who come to see me for weight loss, you know, they're not 10 pounds overweight trying to fit into a dress for their daughter's wedding. The clients who see me, they're 48 years old. They've been ruled out as a candidate for bariatric surgery. They've tried everything in the book. They're going to die in the next 24 months if they don't lose half their body weight. Their physicians usually refer them to me, and you know, they're 450 pounds. These are the people who I work with. And what's interesting is that I defined that niche as something that I was truly skilled in addressing, but I recognized that there was a great audience for me.
Right.
And I began to buy advertising in the local business newspaper. Now, the business newspaper, most cities have something called like the Dallas Business News or the, you know, Denver Local Business Report. And most cities have a business newspaper. Who reads this newspaper are two groups, real estate executives and attorneys. Real estate executives and attorneys have a ton of money. And these business newspapers are primarily used for legal notice publications, which is why they read them. And so I defined that my niche was bariatric counseling, but my audience was going to be attorneys and corporate executives. And so I found that by buying low-cost advertising in that business newspaper, I could reach that audience on an effective basis with a particular service that was useful to them.
Well, and that's the thing, is by saying that I do weight loss or weight release, but I only do it for men over the age of 40 who need to lose, you know, half their body weight or more. You know, those people out there, they've probably tried everything by this point in time. And, you know, they've probably tried Weight Watchers,
Right.
They've probably tried this. And so if you're just on there as the weight loss expert, they're like, yeah, I've heard
One more
it.
weight loss expert.
One more weight loss expert. But when you say, when they read that, and that's who they are over the age of 40, and they need to lose half their body weight, and they read that and they go, well, this guy here is speaking directly to me. So, you know, we were talking about borderline personalities the other day, right? And
I could be a therapist who works with borderline personality disorder. By the way, so do all the other therapists within a 1 square mile radius of my office.
So how would we niche that down more?
Well, we could be a therapist who only works with male borderline personality disorders because it's more prevalent among a female population.
Okay, and then how could we niche that down even more?
Only with adolescent male borderline personality disorders.
Okay, and could we niche down even more?
We could niche it down to only working with male borderline personality disorders who are self-mutilators.
Okay, and so you see, once you put that message out like that, you're going to touch a very specific group of people who are going to come see you. If you say, I only work with adolescent girls, or with adolescent girls who have body image issues, then every person in your city who has a daughter who has body image issues, they're going to go, that's specifically for my daughter. That's not just a therapist.
And in creating an audience, we hold ourselves out as an expert in the areas where we feel passionate and where we have training. And everybody watching this webinar, what I'd like you to do right now is I'd like you to just think for a minute about your experiences over the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years, your interests, your passions. What is it that you do best at? What type of client do you like to work with most? You know, it's really pretty interesting. In my practice, I restrict my practice only to the clients who I like working with and only to the clients who benefit from the services that I offer.
And the clients who can pay.
And the clients who can pay. Yeah. And so a lot of people, I think, are really afraid of my model. They're afraid, wow, doesn't that cut out a lot of people? Yeah, it cuts out a lot of people who aren't going to take advantage of what I have to offer and aren't going to pay me my full fees. And because I'm successful at who I do take and because they pay me my full fees, they refer me everybody else. I've established a pretty good reputation among referral resources here in town, but my clients send other like-minded clients to me on a regular basis. And this is what has helped me to create a large audience within therapeutic coaching.
And also think about the amount of research that's being done right now. right? The amount of research that is being done is immense. So if you have a very, very specific field, that's far less research than you need to keep up on.
Right. Exactly. Sometimes people say, how do you become the expert? And I love your advice. Read the best-selling 3 books on that subject,
Yep.
and you'll know more than 99% of the other therapists in town.
Yeah, even if you want to go to a field you're not sure you're an expert in, you can become an expert pretty quickly.
The third thing that anybody needs to do in private practice to develop a niche, brand themselves, and to create success, which, by the way, is why you're attending this webinar, is develop an elevator pitch. I meet a lot of people when I say, oh, so as a therapist, what is it that you specialize in? Or what type of therapeutic services do you offer? And they sort of look at me and they say, well, I'm like a regular therapist. And so developing what we would call an elevator pitch, something that explains clearly and articulately in 30 seconds or less exactly what you do, and hopefully can also provide an opportunity for interaction with somebody who you're describing this to, can help you to have that stock answer that's going to help you to generate referrals from the real world and the real community and the real people you meet in your everyday world.
Right.
Is that the elevator pitch for an elevator pitch?
Yeah, that's the elevator pitch for an elevator pitch. I'm not sure if it was under 30 seconds though.
Is it really important, though, that a person actually take out a piece of paper and write down and sort of memorize a script for their elevator pitch?
It's vital. I mean, it's vital that you know exactly what you do and who you do it for, and that way you can convey that to other people quickly. I mean, the elevator pitch is something that you can actually rehearse.
And it should be rehearsed, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, because just saying that you're a therapist or just saying that you're a life coach, it doesn't give a person anything to hold on to in terms of what may specifically apply to them or somebody that they know.
Well, give me an example if you're a life coach, Dave. I'm going to ask you, let's just say we meet.
We just met.
In
Hi.
a social.
Hi, I'm Dave.
Hi, I'm Richard. It's great to meet you.
You too.
You're a friend of Bob's. He said you were a great guy. What is it that you do?
I'm a life coach.
Oh, okay. Like on Oprah?
So you see how that just kind of ends the conversation, right? So we'll try that one more time.
All right.
Hi, I'm Dave.
Dave, I'm Richard. It's great to meet you. You're a friend of Bob's, huh?
Yeah.
What is it that you do?
I help people overcome fear that holds them back in their businesses, their relationships, or their life.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So, and then that's even a kind of general one. Now, if we got more specific, we'll try it one more time.
Hey there.
Hi, I'm Dave.
Dave, I'm Richard. I've seen you here before. It's great to meet you.
Yeah, you too.
What do you do?
I help executives overcome fear that holds them back from normally getting their next promotion.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, and then here's something that we're going to tell you that most people who teach elevator pitches don't do. And this is how you sort of drop it back. And I'll take on sort of more of a therapeutic role real quick. Hi, I'm Dave.
Dave, I'm Richard. It's great to meet you. What do you do?
I help girls who have, adolescent girls who have body image issues overcome those. And I help their families help them also. Do you happen to know any girls like that have those kinds of issues?
I actually have a 19-year-old daughter who has purple hair. And so I was kind of wondering about that myself, yeah.
So when you say, I do this, I'm not a therapist, I'm not a coach, I do this, I help these people with this, and then you're going to say, have you ever experienced that? So like with my fear stuff, when people go, and I meet clients everywhere, because they say, what do you do? And I say, well, I help people overcome fear. A lot of times I find that fear holds people back in their jobs and their relationships and their personal life. People go, oh, and I go, have you ever in your life felt like fear was holding you back from achieving what you really wanted to achieve? And people go, well, yeah. And I go, is there a situation in your life right now where fear seems to be holding you back? And people go, yeah. And I go, well, why don't you just, here's my card, why don't you just give me a call and we'll chat for a while?
And that is a perfect example of how an elevator pitch becomes something that causes a person to look inside themselves. Let me tell a quick story that I think is essential. When we change the message and have somebody look inside of themselves rather than look at us, if I say, ask me what I do.
What do you do?
Dave, I'm Richard Nongard. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm a certified clinical hypnotherapist. I've written 14 books on various subjects related to mental health counseling and clinical hypnotherapy, along with one political book as well, too. The whole time he's looking at me.
Right.
And all of these letters or all of these experiences or all of these degrees may be impressive to me, but frankly, the real world doesn't know the difference between an LMFT, it stands for Lucky Strike, means fine tobacco, an LPC, a mental health counselor, a psychologist, a psychiatrist, a clinical social worker, a pastoral counselor. The clients don't know. The way to connect with somebody to build rapport during an elevator speech is to have them look inside of themselves. So one day I was in front of the Quick Trip, and I was actually I was going to go inside and refill my big iced tea, and there was actually a homeless person out there with a sign, and it said, "We'll work for food." And everybody walks by that sign and looks at the homeless person and sees him. Just like if I tell you all about my books and all the impressive things about me, you look at me. And the way to get a business connection is to create that transderivational search. So I actually walked by the guy with the sign, and I got in my car after refilling my drink, and I happened to have a cardboard box in my car, and I happened to have a Sharpie. So I actually wrote a new sign out, and I actually got out of the truck, and I walked back to the guy with a $5 bill because I was about to insult him. I was going to help him, but I was going to insult him well. Also, so I said to him, "Hey, you're holding the same sign everybody else is holding. So look, here's $5. I also am giving you a new sign. I think you're going to double your income with this sign." And he looked at it, and a big smile came across his face, not because of the $5 bill, but he knew this sign was much more powerful. He turned it around. He put the old sign behind him, and the new sign said, "What would you need if you were hungry?" And whenever somebody walks by that sign, instead of looking at the homeless person asking for money, they have to look inside of themselves in order to come up with an answer. And what Dave is talking about is taking your elevator pitch, and instead of elevating yourself, causing that transderivational search so that somebody who you're talking to has to look inside of themselves. And that formula that Dave just shared with us is what's going to separate you from all of the other therapists. I don't know how many of you are members of local networking groups or Kiwanis clubs or other sorts of things. People ask what you do, and you say, "I'm a therapist." And that's the end of it. But when you use the formula that Dave shared, that was just worth the price of this webinar alone. You will, in fact, generate referrals from the clubs, from the organizations, and from the communities where you are already an active participant. The fourth element of creating a niche is also you defining the processes that are necessary to help people actually make change. A lot of us, we have a degree in psychotherapy, and we've been doing therapy, and we understand our philosophical or theoretical approach to helping people make change. But we don't actually know how to structure 50 minutes with a client so that that 50 minutes is actually beneficial with a client. Most therapy sessions usually begin with, "So what would you like to work on today?" As opposed to, "Here is what we're going to work on today." And in the model of coaching that Dave and I follow, Dave and I bring the agenda to each session. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not client-centered. Ultimately, the client set the agenda by making the appointment in the first place. But we know what processes are useful and helpful. Here's a great example. Dave, you're an expert in fear. A lot of people come to you with fears and specific phobias.
Yes.
Now, I was afraid to fly for a number of years. I overcame my fear. I'm actually now executive platinum on American Airlines. I fly all the time, flying to Hawaii next week. But I remember when I was afraid to fly, I became afraid to fly. I didn't fly for about 10 years. And the instant was, it was less severe, more severe than an emergency landing and less severe than a crash. So I'm going to call it a flop. And I said, I'm never going to get on a plane after that. So I developed my fear instantly. Here's a question. You're an expert in fear. If a person can develop a fear or a phobia instantly, is it possible to overcome a fear or a phobia instantly?
Yes, it is absolutely possible for a person to overcome a fear or a phobia instantly.
You know, it's amazing in the world of therapy, we seem to believe that, wow, it's going to take so long to resolve a client's problems. But we can learn specific strategies for problem solving that can address not just a fear or a specific phobia, but many areas with an intensity of resolution. Is that true?
That's absolutely true. And it's one of the benefits of niching, too, because, when it comes to researching things like best practices.
Sure.
And modalities of therapy or modalities of coaching that have been proven efficacy and whatever else. There's so much out there that you couldn't possibly stay on top of it all at every given time. But when you have a very narrow niche, it doesn't take that long to get through all of the information that's out there and know that these are the best practices.
Sure.
And then creating your own as you go.
Based on the experiences and the strength of your personality.
Yeah.
And these are the things that I just love teaching the therapist, because it's an essential component of being successful in private practice, knowing those strategies and best practices within your niche. A lot of the work that I do is in helping people to develop confidence. I do a lot of public speaking, but I also coach a lot of executives in public speaking. These are folks who have been attorneys or geologists for 10, 15, 20 years within their company, and they've been doing their technical work and doing a great job. But now, because of either changes in the company or because of changes in the way business is done, they're having to make presentations and appear before public groups, maybe even congressional testimony or that type of thing. And they recognize, even though it's late in their career and they're already an expert in something, that they have an issue with public speaking. And so I work with people to help them develop confidence in that area. Well, I think therapists also lack a tremendous amount of confidence. It's amazing how you can be a competent therapist and yet have a lack of confidence in your own expertise. And the fifth part of creating a successful niche is to recognize your expertness and to define yourself within your niche as the expert within your community. And this takes confidence. But let me assure you, you wouldn't be participating in this webinar caring about your future if you weren't a competent person. And so take in a breath, look in the mirror, say to yourself, I'm an awesome therapist, and be confident and represent yourself as an expert. Dave, is it important in creating a niche to hold myself out as an expert?
Yeah, it's vital. It's, the question is how do you know when you're an expert?
Isn't it after I learn everything?
No, and that's sort of, there's the idea of the expert's fallacy, right? That experts tend to hang out with other experts, so don't consider themselves experts. You're an expert when you say you're an expert. Plain and simple. Now, you may not feel that. You may feel like there's always something new to learn, and perhaps that's true. But to the vast majority of the people, and Richard talked about this earlier, there's kind of this common folklore amongst coaches, against a bunch of people really, that once you read the top 3 books on any topic, you are the expert because you know far more than anybody else out there does on that particular topic. So don't be afraid of claiming that you are the expert. I say that I am an expert on fear. I'm America's expert on fear. Now, people might challenge that, but I don't care.
Sure.
Right? And here's the nice thing about being an expert, too.
There's probably somebody who's afraid they're not the expert.
It could be. It could be. Here's the nice thing about that, too, is that, like Richard was talking about starting his niche out in, performance shooting. Well, what happens is, because when you get to be known as an expert in one field, that expertise is basically granted to you in almost everything else you do.
Right.
So basically, when he became the expert in sports performance and shooting performance, then that was, okay, now you're the expert in sports performance.
Yeah, and I have, to be honest with you, watched very few basketball games in my life. I can't remember the last time I played basketball. I was probably in grade school the last time I actually played basketball. Basketball is just not my sport. I've been, since the Oklahoma Thunder's done so well, I'm getting more and more interested in basketball, but I'm still not a basketball aficionado. But what's interesting is because of my expertise, because of the recognition I've been given in working with other athletes, I was actually hired by a professional basketball team to provide some strategic services to a couple of key individuals within their executive team that had to make some significant changes.
Right, and to give you an example, like an example that probably everybody will notice, let's look at, for instance, somebody like Deepak Chopra.
Sure.
Okay, so Deepak Chopra started out in Ayurvedic medicine, right, the medicine of Hinduism and Brahmanism in India and whatnot. Once he was a recognized expert in that, then he started to get granted this expert status in spiritual matters. Now he's like an expert. Like he came out with a book last year or a couple years ago on leadership.
Right.
And look, you and I can both say he's probably never led more than himself in any given situation. But his expert status is given to him. It transfers over.
Right.
So develop an expert status. Say you're the expert. Say that you are the man or the woman that this is your field. And people will follow. People want that. They want to know that they're seeing an expert.
And the bottom line with this is you will find success, and clients will ascribe to you the position of an expert and respond to the interventions that you provide.
Absolutely. So the sixth and final step in creating your niche is to create your online presence and optimization. So give me an example of, for instance, what you often see therapists do for their website and how they kind of...
Well, I see therapists make all kinds of mistakes with the internet. We have to recognize that. Just the other day, the new Yellow Pages came to my door, and the first thing I did was throw it in the recycle bin. The reason why is nobody uses the Yellow Pages. Everybody goes to Google. Okay, that's what everybody does. And if you're not being found in the search results for what people are searching for, then you may as well not even be in private practice. And so the internet is going to be your single greatest opportunity. And here's the thing. So many people are bad at search engine optimization and defining their niche and their keywords that it's easy to become number one. I literally am number 1 through 5 for national keyword search terms that I would have thought 5-10 years ago were impossible to even get noticed in. And yet I'm number 1, 2, 3. In fact, Dave and I own a webpage called mindfulnessmeditation.org. Well, we're competing with Deepak Chopra and the Shambhala Center and, all of Buddhism and the rest of the planet Earth, Jon Kabat-Zinn, and yet we're usually number 8 or 9 in the search results, sometimes even higher, for the keyword term mindfulness meditation. So you need, as a therapist, to learn how to leverage the internet. And here's a couple of simple strategies. This is not an internet course.
Yeah, we're going to go way into this, and we're going to get
later
deeper
on in successive sessions.
Yeah.
But let me just give you an example. I got an email today from a therapist, and her email address was, Jody at the Happy Place Therapy Center. Well, nobody in the world is looking for the Happy Place Therapy Center. What they're doing, let's say they're in Tulsa, what they're doing is they don't know who you are. They're not searching for you. They're not searching for your name. They're not searching for a Happy Place Therapy Center. What they're actually looking for, and I don't know if there really is a Happy Place Therapy Center, the made-up name. There probably is somebody who has that, so I don't know who they are. What somebody who has a problem is doing is they're at home and they're going, how to stop unwanted thoughts. That's what they're typing into Google, and it's coming up with all this stuff. Or they're recognizing maybe that this is fear, and then they're typing in how to stop fear, and it's coming up with all this stuff, or maybe products for sale too, and they realize that it's not specific enough because they want somebody in Tulsa to help them, and so then they type in anxiety cures Tulsa. That's what they're typing into Google. Well, if you own the domain name anxietytulsa.com, you're going to have a lot greater likelihood of coming to the top and actually being found than if you call yourself the Happy, Rainbow, Therapy Center, and then have an article on there about how you help people overcome anxiety. So basic use of keywords, understanding how to tag a website with keywords, and understanding how to use that as part of what in search engine language is called an exact match domain name can dramatically increase your search results. Now, I think this not only has to do, though, with online search, but also has to do with creating a buzz within the community, maybe even media exposure as well.
So the search engine optimization for your website is, it certainly, it can be very important. If you're in a very competitive market, for instance, in New York, it's very challenging to get to the top of the ranking system in New York. But if you do article marketing, if you're writing articles for eZine, if you're creating YouTube videos.
Absolutely.
Right?
I have almost 10 million hits on my YouTube page. I have a video, hopefully everyone here will watch it, because it's at 999,999 95. I need like 500 more people to watch it, and I hit 1 million people. But that exposure on social media has funneled a ton of people to me into the services that I provide.
Absolutely. And, and then there's also things like HARO, Help a Reporter Out, which is you can register there. And when there's a reporter in your neighborhood, that in your area, that is looking for your specialty, they're going to call you and you'll get in the media. Now,
this happened to me last week. Somebody, there was a reporter who was actually looking for to do a thing on resolutions. The people who make resolutions actually stick by their resolutions. So she went to Google and she actually typed in "Stop Smoking Tulsa," and guess what? She came up with me because I've maximized my website, so I'm the #1 person you come up with if you type in "Stop Smoking Tulsa." I'm probably hit number 1, 2, 3, and 4, and so you get me. And so she called me up and she came over here and she did a great story about the services that I provide helping people stop smoking. It was free press. But not only did she do the TV report, but because all TV is now also on the internet, her webpage from an ABC affiliate, that's a high-ranked webpage, linked back to my webpage, giving my webpage even higher credibility, lifting it higher in the search results. So these things can be synergistic. Also, simply creating a buzz within the community.
Yes.
And people say, how do you do this? Let me share with you. Twitter is valuable. Facebook is valuable. And networking with people in your community, letting them know about the services that you provide. Why is Twitter valuable? All of these reporters actually use Twitter to tweet news back and forth. That's actually how it's used in addition to the billions of spam messages.
You can take on high-profile cases if you can create controversy. Controversy is great for creating a buzz.
Sure, absolutely.
Don't be afraid to go there sometimes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And all of these things can be utilized to create buzz and notoriety. And that's the 6th skill or the 6th hallmark of creating a niche market. Now we're going to move into a discussion here, Dave, of some of the aspects that separate coaching from traditional therapy and why this, for many people, would actually be a preferred mode for offering services within their niche.
Sure. And even real quick before we do that, these 6 steps are going to help you. So if you follow these 6 steps, if you have any questions about them, please put them in the chat box. Also, we do these niche development workshops every now and again.
Yeah, we're actually, Dave and I have a niche, I actually had my webmaster put a link below this video, and it's titled Niche Mastermind Group. And Dave and I are actually, I can't remember what the start date is, but I think it's sometime in February. Dave and I are doing a 4-week niche mastermind group where we're actually doing group coaching. It's a webinar format that's different than this in that it's all live, real time. The participants are going to be participating using our WebEx software, and it'll be interactive. So it's limited to only 12 people. But that niche mastermind group is a great place for you to identify your niche and to grow your niche. And Dave and I will be coaching you in specific strategies for how you can market, optimize your website, and get media opportunities by developing your niche.
Yeah, we will help you. This is one-on-one in a group of 12, but we will help you work through. Now, we offer this to a few different communities. So this it fills up quickly when we do it. If you sign up or if you go to it and you don't get in, because we can only handle 12 people because we do want to give everybody the personal attention they deserve. We offer about every 6 months or so. So if you don't get in this time, just let us know you want, and the next one will put you on the wait list.
Sure. But there is a link below here, and you can register for that. But let's go into a discussion of really some of the things that separate coaching or that model from traditional therapy. I've been a therapist for almost 25 years. Tremendous changes have taken place in those last 25 years. Changes in the way healthcare services are delivered and the type of clients that I work with and that I see. As I've talked to therapists over the last 20, 25 years about the work that they do, I've come to the conclusion that because virtually none of us had any business training, we've adapted a therapeutic mindset, certain beliefs about the way things must be done in order for us to be successful. And so what I'm going to share with you now are 4 key things that I think are mindset changes that must take place for us as therapists to experience success in the current era. The first is to change the mindset that the only way to be successful in business is to collect third-party payment. This is a big issue for a lot of people. For a lot of people, the idea of being paid by insurance providers is their security blanket. This is what they believe is going to lead to their success. The reality is third-party payment is never going to lead to your success. If you are collecting third-party payment, your business model, the business model that you subscribe to is this model. I am trading an hour of my time for X number of dollars. And so you are trading dollars for hours. The only thing you can do in that model is increase your number of hours or increase the number of dollars you charge for those hours, but you are always capped at how many hours you can work during a week. You can never exceed, let's say you charge $100 an hour and you collect $50 of that, and you work, because seeing 30 clients a week face-to-face would be a tremendous amount of work. Well, 50 times 30 is, you're the math person, I have a degree in therapy, 1,500, that's $6,000 a month maximum potential. So this trading dollars for hours model is really a lousy model. And if you collect third-party reimbursement, this is the model you subscribe to. It limits you. It decreases your potential from a business perspective. And so what is the alternative? The alternative is to change your mindset and realize that there are many people out there who are willing to pay for the expert to help them apply their expertise. People out there are more than happy to pay me my full fee for the services that I provide. One of the services that I provide is I do a lot of smoking cessation work. I started out, like probably some of you participating in this webinar, as a drug and alcohol counselor. I spent the first 10 years of my career primarily working with families related to drug and alcohol dependency. But as most of you who are participating in this webinar know, those folks aren't particularly good at paying their bills in private practice. So sure, we can collect third-party reimbursement for their hospitalizations or their state funds from their rehab program ordered by the judge, etc. But in private practice, drug addicts and alcoholics, aren't going to be the high-paying clientele. They're going to be able to feed a private practice. And sure, I could see them, and I could bill their insurance company for the services that I provide, but I'd have to deal with no-shows. I'd have to deal with people who are unmotivated. I'd have to deal with people who are relapsing, and do I have the supports here in private practice, etc. And so even though I'm passionate about this area, I've learned that it's only profitable, back to that first thing related to niche creation, to work with smokers. And so the only substance addiction counseling that I do now is to help smokers become non-smokers. And the way I do this is real simple. I charge $400, and I see them for usually 2 or 3 sessions. They leave the first session a non-smoker. I see them again 2 or 3 days later for a follow-up. And if necessary, I'll see them a couple of weeks later for a third session. On a rare occasion, I may see somebody for 4 sessions, but I charge them the same amount of money, whether I see them once, twice, 3 times, or 4 times, because the new model is that I'm selling a solution. To see Richard Nongard for smoking cessation is $395. I'm not charging them $105 per hour. One of the things that I think is hilarious is watching a client ask a therapist, how much are the fees? The client will say this, so how much are your fees? And the therapist will say, well, it all depends on your insurance. They don't have the answer to that. Well, you can call me and you can ask me what my fee is, and I'll tell you. As a matter of fact, my clients know what my fee is before they call me, because I publish my fees on my website. The reason why I publish my fees on my website is I only want people who can afford my services to call me. The only people who call me for smoking cessation are people who can afford to pay me $395. The reason why? They know how much it costs before they ever pick up the phone to make that call. So as therapists, our challenge is to change our mindset and recognize that people are willing to pay the expert for help, and that third-party payment actually will reduce the likelihood of success rather than increase your likelihood of success. It is a myth that you need third-party payment in order to be successful, and it's a myth that is going to be your ticket to financial freedom. Your ticket to financial freedom is stop trading dollars for hours and start selling solutions. Mindset number 2 that must be changed in order for us to experience success. I can only see clients to help them make change in my office or within the state in which I'm licensed. Again, you may be restricted by law and by code of ethics in the type of services that you provide, either interstate or online, with mentally ill people who you're diagnosing and treating for psychiatric illness. But that's not what Dave and I are teaching, and that's not who we work with online. Who we work with online primarily are executives. Dave and I consulted with a CFO recently who is making a decision about hiring a CFO for his company. He's been very successful in his business over the last 20 years. He's built an awesome business, but hiring a new CFO, which is the first time he's done this after 20 years, is a huge endeavor for him. And it's not that he doesn't know what he wants. It's that he needs to know that he can create the confidence to make the best selection. And he also must have somebody who he can interact with on a personal level with a sense of respect and with a sense of learning to develop really a new relationship. This really isn't unlike helping somebody whose first spouse left them figure out how to work in a new marriage with the new spouse. It really draws on those skills of relationship consulting, and that's the type of work that we often do. And this type of work is not about diagnosing and treating a mental illness. It's about helping somebody who's already awesome continue to be awesome. And there's absolutely no reason why we can't use Skype or technology to offer these services to individuals. I did a webinar series not too long ago on using Skype and online web conferencing services, and there are a variety of them out there. The reason why Dave and I tend to prefer Skype is because 700 million people have a Skype account. It's simple to use, and it's free, and it usually works. And somebody in the webinar kept saying, yes, but because of HIPAA, you can't utilize Skype. It's not HIPAA compliant. Let me just touch on that for a minute. One, HIPAA doesn't certify software. It certifies providers. Second, HIPAA only applies to the electronic transmission of client data when they're seeking third-party reimbursement. My clients are not paying me with insurance. My clients are paying me as an expert to consult with them, not because they're mentally ill, not because I'm treating mental illness, but because I'm an expert who's helping them solve a specific problem. And there's absolutely no reason why I shouldn't use 256-bit encrypted Skype software to do that. So we have to change our mindset and realize when we offer a new type of services using really primarily a coaching model, we are outside of the domain of traditional psychotherapy. The third mindset is in establishing fees. Now, I said I charge $400 here in my office in Tulsa to help people quit smoking. I actually don't know what you should charge for your services. The reason why I don't know is money doesn't translate well geographically. If I lived in Manhattan, I'd probably charge $1,000. If I lived in Los Angeles, I'd probably charge $750. If I lived in Denver, I'd probably charge $650. If I lived in Dallas, I'd probably charge $450. I live in Tulsa, Oklahoma, so it's $395. If I lived in Peoria, Illinois, it'd be $250. So what you should charge for your services is in many ways often geographically dependent. Now, the internet gives us the ability to sort of level the playing field no matter where you are geographically, and services actually done online are actually sometimes priced differently than services that I might provide in my office as well. What I'm talking about here, though, is not how much should you charge, but to recognize a very important principle. In fact, this principle is so important, it goes back thousands of years. It's a scriptural idea, and the idea is that a workman is worth his wages. How many of you who are watching this webinar joined this webinar because you're thinking to yourself, you know what? The income I earn is not commensurate with somebody who has a master's degree or a doctorate and 10 or 20 years worth of experience. And you look at the horizon and changes in the way healthcare delivery is going to be offered, and you're thinking to myself, there's no way my salary is going to increase. It actually looked like my investment in my degrees might be a diminishing return. One of the cool things about a coaching model is that we can charge the fees that we are worth. And the fees are often, by the way, commensurate with the outcomes that we produce for clients. Now, there was an interesting article in Forbes magazine a couple years back, and it was the article was titled "Six Surprising Six-Figure-a-Year Jobs," and the number one on the list was life coaching. Mm-hmm. You are in New York City. You work with a lot of other life coaches. You know a lot of other life coaches. Is it uncommon for life coaches to be able to earn a six-figure-a-year salary?
No. If a life coach understands the whole niching and marketing aspect of their business, then it is not difficult for them to make six figures.
Now, here's another question for you. When people establish the fees that they charge for the services they provide, do most people charge too much or too little?
And most people charge way too little.
Way too little.
Yeah.
And again, I've always said one of the things that holds us back from success is our lack of confidence. As a therapist, your mindset is, wow, $125 an hour is a lot. But in the world of corporate coaching, that's not. I spent a lot of time in the 90s doing consulting for community-based organizations, probation departments, educational organizations, and I charged $1,500 to $1,800 per day for my consulting services. And I began to look towards an executive clientele within the corporate and the business world, applying those same skill sets. And I was talking to some other consultants, and I said, how come I don't have any calls? And they all said, because you don't charge $3,000 a day like we do.
Right.
And as soon as I raised my rates, doubled my rates,
right,
the calls started coming in.
Right.
And I think that's the hardest thing for people to realize, that the more you charge, the more the phone is going to ring. Has that been your experience?
The more value people are going to see in you, and the more committed they're going to be to the process. And yeah, I mean, it's totally been my experience.
And this is the third mindset that we have to change in order to experience success in private practice. The fourth mindset change that needs to be addressed is to recognize that the model that Dave and I utilize to help people experience success in life and achieve their goals is a model that does not involve us in the content of our clients' crisis, emotions, and experiences. As therapists, we were almost all trained that the way to resolve a client's problem is to be with that client and evaluate their past experiences, see where it brings them today, be with them in their times of crisis and difficulty in order to be able to move forward. And for us to be able to do that in a therapeutic approach, we have to become involved and have the details and the specific aspects of our client's trauma, problem, or difficulty, which of course can be very tiring. And I meet a lot of therapists who after 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years of doing therapy are just a little bit burned out. And one of the cool things about the model that you and I use in our coaching work is that it doesn't require that we become involved in the content of our clients as long as we are involved in the context of their experience. We call our model contextual coaching because it's not about us being a part of it, but rather about our clients seeing themselves in the present with their strengths, their resources, and being able to implement a strategic plan for problem solving. This is really entirely different than therapy. Back in 2006, when I left the world of therapy behind, I learned this through an interesting client. She came in, and I remember my receptionist had booked the appointment, and my receptionist always notes the reason why a person is coming in, but there was nothing there. And so when the client came in, I didn't know why she was going to be there, and I said to her, well, normally my office notes why somebody scheduled an appointment. What brought you to my office? And she looked at me and she said, I have to make a decision. And I said to her, okay, thinking like a therapist, could you tell me about the decision? Because remember, I've been primarily doing therapy for the past 15, 20 years, whatever. And she said, I'd prefer not to. I was kind of mystified here. I'd never had anybody tell me that before. And she said, the reason why I came to see you rather than a therapist is, let me explain something to you. I'm 45, I have 2 doctorates, I'm a very intelligent person, I speak 3 languages, play concert piano, and I'm totally incredibly awesome. And And so I'm a smart person. And because I'm a smart person, I know what decisions I need to make. I just haven't felt like I've had either a place to make them or the space to make them. I didn't even understand what she was talking about. But I decided to actually leave the therapeutic model behind and enter into the world of coaching. And so I said to her, fantastic, I'm glad you're here. I still had no idea what I was going to do with her. And so I had her fill out some forms where she left a lot of blank spaces. And as I began my session with her, I simply said to her, as you relax in the chair, you can go ahead and close your eyes and you can take this safe place. You can take this opportunity that you've created for yourself to make the decisions that are going to be important to you right here and right now. And I shut up. I didn't say anything. I let her actually sit there in silence in that chair with her eyes closed for 10 minutes. And I kept thinking, I should say something. I should be doing something. And I remember I was almost testing my new model, and I realized, you know what? I don't need to know the content of my clients' problems or involve myself in the content of my clients' problems in order to help them make change. At the end of that session, she said to me, wow, that was exactly what I needed. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I'm going to send other people to you. To this day, I still have no idea what it was that she came to me for. But I learned that in a model of coaching, we give our clients what they need rather than inject ourselves into the content of their experience. This, by the way, can be tremendous relief for those of you who are interested in moving to a model of brief therapy. I do solution-focused brief therapy. I do clinical hypnotherapy. I typically see my clients 3 to 6 sessions max. Most therapists are seeing clients for months or even years on end. And the mindset that needs to change is that if we keep clients longer, we'll be able to fix them better. If we get more involved with them, we'll be able to fix them better. The reality is we can do content-free coaching and experience tremendous success in a solution-focused modality of helping people experience change.
So in order to let you know what's going to be happening over the next 3 sessions, so I want to let you know what's going to happen over the next 3 sessions. The next session, we're going to talk about how to maximize your internet presence, how to utilize the internet, and some other tools for marketing, and that'll include a little bit of media. We'll talk a little bit about books. And just some other ideas.
Yeah, in fact, even during this webinar, I'm going to give you a homework assignment. I'd like to see some of you actually have a chance to get a newspaper article or even get on the local news before this whole 4-week series is over with. And next week, I'll give you an assignment that can actually help you to accomplish that.
Yeah. So we'll talk about that in the next session: how to maximize your internet presence, and then also how to maybe get some speaking gigs at like local organizations like Kiwanis. For me personally, almost every time I speak, I get a new client. Almost every single time. So I can't.
And that's because you've perfected your elevator pitch.
Absolutely.
Because there are a lot of people watching who speak and never get a client from that.
Right.
And it's because they didn't teach us in therapy school how to close the deal.
Right.
And Dave and I are going to teach you those closing strategies.
Absolutely. And then the second workshop, or the third workshop actually, but the second one from this one, we're going to talk about establishing a new model for your fees and how to get paid. And we're going to include things like not only your personal fees, but how do you set up groups? How do you set up online webinars? How do you set up the different profit models?
Right. And products.
And products. And we're going to talk about products. Absolutely. Products is very important. But we're going to set up different profit models for you so that you're not always trading time for dollars. If I see a client, it doesn't matter if I'm charging $100 an hour or $1,000 an hour, I can only see so many clients in a particular time frame, right? But if I have products out there, if I'm doing group workshops, if I'm doing webinars, a lot of different things are going to enable me to maximize my cash flow. And then in the last session, we're going to talk about a coaching-based model that I think a lot of you are going to be very interested in, and how to work with a completely different type of client, how to take advantage of the recent statistics that came out said that there are only like 20,000, right? 10,000.
Actually, there was a statistic in, I think it was Family Therapy Network or magazine. There are about 10,000 life coaches.
Yeah, and again, coaching is
There's 220,000 licensed therapists, 10,000 coaches. I mean, the business principle here is you can choose to be a little fish in a big pond competing with all the therapists around you, or you can be a big fish in a very small pond. And life coaching is a small pond. They can be extremely profitable for those who establish a niche within those areas.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So we'll go more into that, and we'll teach you some crucial skills in order to kind of jumpstart that for you.
Now, I want to touch on one more thing, though, and that is our niche building group coaching session that we're doing. Right below this video is a link called the Mastermind or Niche Building Mastermind Group. It's right below here. You can't miss it. And if you've found what Dave and I have talked about interesting and helpful to you, but you think, wow, I wish I could have some personal attention specifically looking at my unique strengths, maybe your unique deficits, the unique community where you're in. Maybe you're in a very small area and it's going to be a challenge versus an area like New York City, or maybe you're in New York City and it's a challenge because there are so many people offering services and you'd like to figure out how to set yourself apart. In this mastermind group, we're going to use a WebEx software, so it's going to be very interactive. We expect you to have a webcam and a microphone. You can also access with a telephone. But to participate fully in this with us. And all of the information is below. You can click on that. We have 12 spots. I think a couple of them probably are filled already.
I think about half filled right now.
But we'd love to have some of you from this group join that. Because we know that you'll benefit from that individualized attention. And I think that class, if I remember correctly, I don't want to give the info wrong, but I think it's on Tuesday nights and it begins next month. So I want to say thank you for participating today. Dave and I look forward to seeing you same time, same channel, same access instructions for next week's webinar on practice building.
Take care. Thank you.